I'll get into that in just a minute. At this time, Mr. President, I'd like to, without yielding the floor, stop for a question from the senator from Georgia.
Well, I thank the senator from Kentucky, and first of all, let me say I appreciate the senator's passion. I appreciate the fact that, as he knows, he and I have had some discussions about this issue over the last several days and weeks. And I appreciate you bringing this to the forefront as you've done. We have talked about your question that you submitted to Mr. Brennan for answering, and this is not a rocket science question. This is a question that is perfectly reasonable, perfectly rational, and a question that ought to be able to be addressed by the administration in a very quick, simple, direct response. And I have been dumbfounded, as the senator from Kentucky knows, about the fact that you didn't get a straightforward, simple answer immediately. But the fact of whether or not a drone attack, and I am one of those who thinks that we need to detain and interrogate folks as opposed to just firing drones at everybody, because we're losing a lot of valuable information from folks that we take shots at versus folks that we're able to detain and interrogate. But still, I know the senator from Kentucky agrees with me that at the end of the day, we need to take out bad guys that seek to do us harm. And your position all along has been that with due process, that ought to happen. My question to the senator is that, you know, with the administration not giving you a straightforward answer, and I understand that the Attorney General, in response to some questions today in the Judiciary Committee, again was very evasive on the question, in spite of having given you a letter just yesterday on this issue, that there still is not a straightforward, black or white, as it appears to me they could give you, answer to this question. Am I correct about that?
Mr. President, the senator from Georgia is correct, and I also, while he's on the floor, want to thank him for getting some of this information to come forward, because it has been a very onerous task, and without his leadership on the Intelligence Committee, as well as Republicans and Democrats asking for more information, we wouldn't have gotten anywhere here. And with that input, we've been able to get some answers. The answers haven't all been good. Brennan has answered, I think, the appropriate answer. The CIA doesn't work within the United States. And that should be pretty obvious, because everybody knows that, and that's the law. The problem is it doesn't answer the final question, because the drone program is under the Department of Defense. And really, if we're going to bring that home to America, I really think the Intelligence Committee, as well as the whole body, ought to be not just waiting for the president to tell us how he's going to use it in America. Really, we have civil law in America, and we ought to be part of that process. But I don't think we can allow it to go on without our input.
Let me, Mr. President, if I could ask the senator again a little different question, just to make sure that I understand exactly what the senator has asked for. Your position, as I understand it, has been all along that if we have bad guys flying airplanes into a tower, or if we have folks who are firing missiles or tanks or weapons of any sort in the United States seeking to carry out an act of war, an act of terrorism, taking those guys out is not a problem.
Yeah, Mr. President, the idea of combating lethal force, I don't think is questioned by very few, if anybody. You know, if planes are flying into the Twin Towers, we obviously send up F-16s. If we have missiles, we do whatever we can to stop an attack on America. What I'm really concerned about, and in the same way, if it's a domestic terrorist, if there's someone outside the Capitol with a grenade launcher, we don't give them Miranda rights, we kill them. I mean, that's the way it works. If you are exerting lethal force against American soldiers anywhere in the world or our country, you use lethal force to stop that. And sometimes you can't stop to even ask permission from Congress. You do that. Imminent threats are repulsed. But because a lot of the drone attacks, and I'm not saying they're necessarily wrong the way they're done, it's just that they're done at people that aren't in the middle of a battle. So if we transfer that to America, I don't think that's acceptable for America. It's a different debate on whether it's always a good idea, whether we should do it, and what the rules should be overseas. But the rules we have currently, I don't think are appropriate for the United States.
And again, Mr. President, if I could direct a question to the Senator, the fact is that from a pure oversight standpoint, Armed Services, Intel, these committees that have jurisdiction over the issue of fighting the war on terrorism need to have the right kind of information so that we can ask the right questions. And getting the right kind of information out of this administration has been worse than having a root canal and more difficult than having a root canal. And I, again, am appreciative of the Senator being forceful in asking of the question. And I think at the end of the day, again, you have had no issue relative to ultimately let's having a vote on Mr. Brennan. I'm not supportive of the nomination of Mr. Brennan, but I think he ought to have a vote. And I intend to express myself in much greater detail on that a little bit later. But from the standpoint of simply moving the issue forward, if the administration had come to you with a direct answer days or weeks ago when you asked the question, we probably would not be here now. So again, I thank the Senator for his comments on this issue.
Well, Mr. President, I want to thank the ranking member of the Intelligence Committee and also say that this could come to a close any time. If the President will sort of say what Attorney General Holder was trying to say this morning and put it into actual words, that he thinks that he has the military authority to reject imminent attack, I think we all agree to that. But if he says that he's not going to use drones on people who are not engaged in combat in America, I think we could be done with this debate. I think one phone call from the President to clarify what his position is, or from the Attorney General to actually write out what his position is. But I guess the reason I'm kind of alarmed is we have a quote from the Attorney General saying that the Fifth Amendment, the executive branch will decide when and if to use the Fifth Amendment. Now, I understand in times of war and in battlefields, that's a different story. I'm talking about in the United States. I don't think the executive